Hello, good morning. It is autumn, which is my favourite season, and today there is a little bit of sun and a little bit of breeze, so not too gloomy. And my plan for today is very simple. It's going to be something a little bit different to my usual wildlife outings, but what I would really like to do is start practicing my plant ID. I'm going to go for a walk down a public footpath that runs along a stream, and I would say for the most part is shaded by trees, and I'm going to film anything that catches my eye or is of interest to me, and I will then be coming home looking at my footage and learning how to ID some of the things that I have filmed. So that's my plan. Now I'm going to go and get packed up and head out. So I'm on the public footpath now, and as you can see, some of it is dappled with sunlight. That's one of the reasons that I wanted to do it in the sun, so that I could show you that sunlight does reach some of it despite the fairly thick tree canopy for most of it. And obviously that will change as I go down the footpath. It also varies in width. Some of it's quite narrow and some of it is a lot wider. And the reason this matters is because originally I was planning to bring my 100 to 400mm lens and tripod, as this is how I prefer to get macro shots. But obviously I would need to get at a suitable distance from the subject for this, and with some very narrow parts of the footpath and awkward angles, this wouldn't be possible. Instead, I'm using my Lumix G85 and a small lens, which is 12 to 60. So let's see how well that does. So this is the first thing that I'm going to spend a bit of time filming. I always love a mossy bank, and there is quite a lot growing out of the bank as well as moss, so I thought I'd spend some time getting some footage of this. Getting the shots wasn't too difficult, but the Lumix G85 isn't the best at focusing quickly, so it did take a bit of patience. You can see in this one, for example, how I had the focal point in the centre and the other leaves are slightly out of focus, and you can also see how at times the camera struggled to keep the focus when moving. But overall, I think I managed to get some crisp images. There were quite a few tracks through the banks which were clearly from animals passing through regularly. I can actually smell fox. Do you ever get that when you're walking somewhere and you just get a strong whiff of fox fragrance? Well, I can definitely smell them now. I'm down by the stream now, and if I'm completely honest, I am a little bit overwhelmed by the amount of different trees and plants here, and I really just don't know where to start. So I think I'm just going to get some footage of just one plant and start there, because otherwise I will just feel completely lost. So I think that this one looks interesting, so I'm going to get some shots of that, and then when I get back, look into what it is. And I've left this because I think it gives an insight to the autofocus abilities of the G85. You can see that it's a good crisp image until I start moving, and then it takes a while to catch up. So I'm just on my way out of the lane, and I spotted two more types of fungi. So I'm going to get some shots of those, and then I'm going to head home. Okay, so I have just got back, thoroughly washed my hands and made myself a coffee, and I have laid out what I collected. So these are the items I collected, and I got video footage of other things I want to ID also. So first, let's list them. So the purpose of this is to learn, and I focused on what I could not ID. However, there are a few things here that I think I know, so let's start with some guesses. I am pretty sure that number 5 is hazelnuts, but I wanted to double check, and I would say that I'm pretty much certain that number 8 is from a great spotted woodpecker. I'm going to say lichen for 6, but I would like to know more about this. And that's it for my guesses, so now on to the ways to actually identify. I took my time doing the research over a few days and started with the plants. I came across the first leaf when just doing some general research by looking through the plantlife.org.uk plant guide. I recognised it from the illustration and picture and then compared it to the footage and sample. It has strap-shaped leaves that are the correct length, and it was indeed found in the habitat described. Next, I researched into it further. I found out that it is a native species. It's in leaf all year round. It has a deep green strap or tongue-like glossy fronds, likes woodland, hedgerows and damp places, and has many uses, including those listed here. When I said it looked interesting, I certainly didn't expect it to be this incredible a plant. For the next leaf, I tried a different ID method as I wanted to test out various methods of IDing throughout this process. So for this one, I took a screenshot of my video of the leaf and I pasted it into Google in the image search option, and it did indeed bring up many suggested similar images, which helped me to identify it as navelwort or wall pennywort. And you might notice from the scientific name that it's called umbilicus, referring to the leaves which grow in rosettes and around, usually with shallow scalloped edges and a navel or depression in the middle. This plant likes damp rock crevices and shady walls, which fits exactly with where I found it, and it actually flowers in May. It is edible and has herbal uses, some of which I have listed. Again, I wouldn't have expected that it would be edible or have so many different uses. Number 3 is the yellow leaf I found. For this, I actually ended up asking on a plant ID forum. There was a bit of discussion on there about the leaf, but it ended up being decided that it is an ivy leaf. This surprised me as I think of ivy leaves as being lobed, but I've now learned that that applies to juvenile leaves, whereas older leaves can appear more rounded or oval. Ivy is also native to the UK and has various habitats, and as I'm sure you know, it can grow to quite a height. To identify the next leaf, I looked through some wild ID guides published by the Field Studies Council. It didn't take long to spot the exact leaf shape. I checked this on a forum and my ID was confirmed. This is from a butterbur. Butterburs are native, and their preferred habitat of being near a river in a damp woodland area fits with where I found it. It turns out that those amazing giant leaves, often featured in tourist attraction gardens with people posing next to them or walking among them feeling small, are giant butterbur, a relative of this. So moving away from the leaves, my guess for hazelnuts was correct. I looked at some images to confirm, and I now know why I see squirrels down that lane. Grey squirrels, not red, because hazelnuts are a very nutritious food for squirrels. Hazelnuts are from the hazel tree, and the nuts fall out of the husk when ripe. So moving on to the lichen. Whilst I thought that it was 2 different types of lichen growing on this branch, I didn't know much more about it, and delving into the world of lichen ID was more complex than I had expected. I ended up using a couple of websites, including the British Lichen Society website. I trawled through the different types of lichen on the site, and based on images, I guessed 2 options, which I've written on the screen. I then started doing a bit of research into my guesses and found that my guess for the lichen on the left was not viable because it is not found in Cornwall. So I tried again and I ended up with 2 guesses I was fairly happy with. I then asked around on forums, not suggesting my guesses but asking what others thought, and I only got 1 response despite posting on a few different forums, and I definitely got the impression from looking at different forums that people find it a lot harder to weigh in with opinions on lichen ID than on other types of ID. However, the 1 response that I got was on a forum called fungi.org.uk, and the response suggested the exact 2 lichens that I had guessed, so I'm going to go with those. Obviously, if you know about lichens, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So the first lichen, Evernia prunastri, if I'm saying that correctly, is also known as oak moss, as it grows primarily on the trunk and branches of oak trees, although it can be found on other trees. The colour of it varies and includes greenish white when dry and dark olive green to yellow green when wet. And interestingly, I found out that it is used in modern day perfumery, which I would never have thought. The second lichen, Palmotrema pilatum, again, I'm unsure if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is commonly found on rocks or trees. It's found in diverse locations around the world. In the UK, it's common in the south, but decreasing in the north, and is used as a spice in Indian cuisine. So I would love to know what you think of this and if you agree with those identifications. Next, we move on to the two feathers. A few days after collecting this small feather, I actually came across an even smaller feather with exactly the same markings and colours in my garden, but this one was with some equally small blue-grey feathers, which gave me a clue as to which bird they might belong to. I used a website which I have recently come across called Featherbase, which shows you all feathers for each bird listed on the site. From this, I was able to ID that the feather looks to be from a wood pigeon. Now, I have a real soft spot for wood pigeons. They're actually one of my favourite birds, and I feel like they get a bad rep. I think they are wonderful creatures and fascinating to research. They feed their young with something very similar to milk produced by mammals called crop milk or pigeon milk. It's a whitish liquid filled with nutrients, fats, antioxidants and healthy proteins, and it's regulated by the same hormone that regulates the production of milk in mammals. They can breed year-round, especially in areas with abundant food, and unlike most birds that have to tip their heads back to drink water, they can suck up water continuously, much like using a straw. The next feather is the great spotted woodpecker feather. Whilst it was pretty clear to me that this is the bird the feather belonged to, it was an interesting process actually looking at the feather-based images of feathers for this bird. On the website, you can pull up the photograph of the feathers and also open a measuring tool which allows you to draw a line between 2 points and get a measurement. So I measured the feather I had collected, and from this was able to measure similar feathers on the feather-based photo to find where in the wing the feather would have been from. I think this measurement tool could be very useful for helping to learn feather IDs in the future. Great spotted woodpeckers are pretty amazing, and a year or so back I got some great 4K footage of woodpecker chicks calling to be fed and being fed by both parents, and so I have a video showing that behaviour over time, as well as a video sharing information about great spotted woodpeckers. So if you're interested in finding out more and seeing those videos, I will link them below. It is a few weeks later now, much later on than I had planned to post this video, and the reason for that is the fungi. I had been looking forward to the fungi ID more than everything else, but I very quickly discovered that fungi ID is no straightforward task. I actually nearly re-edited the whole of this video so that I could cut out the fungi entirely because I had terrible trouble with IDing the different mushrooms, hence the delay of this video. And even though I am still not sure I have the correct IDs for the mushrooms, I have learned so much from this process that I thought it would be worth sharing anyway. It might help you if you're new to IDing mushrooms, or maybe you can help me to ID the mushrooms if you're already pretty confident with this. I originally started by looking through databases like Wild Food UK, but there are so many different species that I realised I needed to know more before doing this. I then began posting on various forums and very quickly learned that not many are willing to accept photos of mushrooms unless you post a lot of information and various photos. I didn't have everything I needed for my posts to be accepted most of the time. So if you're planning to get into fungi ID, make sure you get images of the cap, stem, underside, and provide information about habitat. And for some forums, the spore print colour and observed changes to bruising are also sought. Now that I know this, I will be a lot more detailed in my approach to capturing pictures in the future. There are about 15,000 types of wild fungi in the UK, so it's understandable that so much information and so many images are needed to help with the ID process. It also seems that people are quite nervous of IDing a mushroom because some people are looking to forage and eat mushrooms. And a lot of the forums make it very clear that it's your responsibility to decide whether or not to eat a mushroom and that you shouldn't rely on other people to ID it for you. And so I've definitely learned a lot from this process, even if I haven't definitely learned what these fungi are. In the end, rather than trying to work out the exact species of each mushroom, bar one which I think I know, I stuck with the genus for each being the rank higher than species. And that is it for what started out as an adventure into the world of ID and became even more interesting than I could have imagined. And so a walk down a tree-lined lane led to the discovery of many wild secrets. I hope you enjoyed sharing this autumnal exploration with me. Please support my channel by liking and subscribing, and I will see you in the next video.